You know exactly what needs to be done. The document is open, the cursor blinks against the white screen, yet your hands hesitate as if pinned down. Minutes pass, then hours. Another day quietly closes, leaving behind unfinished tasks and a guilt that grows heavier in your chest. To an outsider, the conclusion is simple. You're lazy, or perhaps you just lack motivation. They believe all you need is an emotional spark, a strong enough push to get things moving. But the truth is deeper and colder than that. The problem has never been about motivation. It's about how your mind is silently operating. The root of procrastination isn't weakness. It is a sophisticated defense mechanism built to avoid pain. When you hesitate before a difficult report or keep delaying putting on your shoes to head out, it's usually not because you're truly exhausted. Hidden behind that lingering is an old fear. The fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of not being good enough. In response, your brain offers a temporary sense of comfort, as if stalling just a bit longer is safer. But that very comfort is silently eroding your potential, rotting your discipline, and pulling you away from your strongest self. Every time you tell yourself, later, you aren't just delaying a task, you are delaying your own life. The way out doesn't lie in waiting for inspiration, but in the moment you see through the true nature of fear. If you are tired of the cycle of compromise and regret, stay here with Stoic Journey. Hit the subscribe button and leave a comment about the one thing you are avoiding most right now. Sometimes, daring to call fear by its name is the first step to reclaiming power from it. And right now, we're going to dismantle the illusion of waiting for the right mood, to discover a silent but powerful principle that forces your mind to move, even when it resists. 1. The essence of procrastination: fear and the perspectives of psychology and Stoicism. Most of us are all too familiar with sentencing ourselves with a simple label: I am lazy. But if you look deeper, the truth is not that simple. At its core, procrastination is not a lack of motivation, but a defensive response of the mind against discomfort. It is the brain's way of delaying a collision with potential pain, the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of not being good enough, and even deeper, the fear of facing one's own true limits. From a psychological perspective, hesitation often appears as a self-defense mechanism. When a task makes you feel pressured, insecure, or threatens your self-esteem, the mind seeks to push it away in exchange for a temporary sense of comfort. This is why an unanswered email, an unfinished report, or a workout you keep rescheduling can weigh on your mind for days. The problem is no longer the task itself, but the narrative you've built around it. The more you avoid it, the more the task expands in your perception, and this exaggeration feeds anxiety, draining your inner peace. Next time you find yourself mindlessly scrolling through your phone while work sits right in front of you, don't rush to conclude that you are weak or lack willpower. In many cases, what is operating beneath the surface is not laziness, but fear. You fear you won't do it well enough. You fear the results won't meet expectations. You fear facing the reality that you aren't as perfect as the image your ego tries to maintain. And it is at this point that Stoic philosophy begins to exert its liberating power. The Stoic masters understood very well that humans are often defeated not by events, but by how they interpret those events in their minds. What paralyzes you before a task isn't necessarily its actual difficulty, but the heavy judgment you attach to it. That it's too big, too scary, too important, or that if you can't do it perfectly, it's better not to start at all. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us that what causes us suffering is not just external circumstances, but the way we view them. Once you understand this, you realize the task ahead may be difficult, but what is truly binding your feet is the dramatic layer of meaning your mind has draped over it. Therefore, the first step to escaping procrastination isn't forcing yourself into desperate action, but stopping long enough to look directly at the fear hiding behind it. Ask yourself, what about this makes me resist so much? Am I truly in danger, or am I just afraid of feeling imperfect, afraid of being judged, or afraid of losing a beautiful self-image? Simply by naming the fear, you begin to weaken its power. But recognition alone is not enough. The inertia of procrastination doesn't vanish by logic alone. To break it, you need a smarter approach, a step so small that the mind doesn't have time to resist, yet powerful enough to pull your entire being out of a standstill. 2. The 5-minute miracle rule, starting to outsmart the brain. The sharpest compromise you can make with yourself right now isn't a grand promise or a bold commitment to change your life starting tomorrow. It's just 5 minutes. A mere 300 seconds. It sounds so small it's almost meaningless, but that very smallness is what makes it dangerous to procrastination. Because what paralyzes you from the start isn't always the task itself, but the feeling of overwhelm when looking at its entire volume. When the mind thinks it must handle everything at once, it immediately triggers an avoidance mechanism. But when you only ask yourself to start for 5 minutes, that resistance drops significantly. 5 minutes is a commitment level so low that the brain hardly feels the need to fight back. You don't need to finish the whole report. You just need to open the file and write the first few lines. You don't need to clean the whole room. You just need to fold a few pieces of clothing. You don't need to run 5 kilometers. You just need to put on your shoes and step out the door. The power of this rule doesn't lie in the amount of work you get done in 5 minutes, but in the fact that you've broken the state of stillness. Once action begins, the mind enters a different state. The unfinished task starts to occupy your awareness, and you'll find that continuing is much easier than stopping and starting all over again. That's why the first 5 minutes are often the hardest, but also the most decisive. The Stoic spirit has long touched upon this truth in a very simple way. Do not let the mind be crushed by the entirety of the future. Return to the task lying right before you. You don't need to carry the weight of an entire month, a year, or a long journey ahead. You only need to be honest with the present 5 minutes. Just do the closest, smallest, most specific task. When you narrow your attention to an action small enough, perfectionism loses its power. Fear no longer has much room to swell, and what once seemed gargantuan suddenly becomes reachable. The truth is, the hardest part of any change is rarely the long road. It's the initial moment of starting. Once you've begun, inertia gradually shifts to your side. But starting alone isn't enough to go the distance. Many people can start for a few minutes, then quickly become overwhelmed when looking at the rest of the way. Therefore, after tricking the brain into taking the first steps, the next thing you must learn is an even colder principle: how to break down things that seem too large so the mind no longer has a reason to run away. 3. Breaking down the mountain, the power of micro steps. Once you've cleared the hurdle of the first 5 minutes, another difficulty almost immediately appears: the feeling of being overwhelmed by the entire remaining workload. Many people don't stop because they are weak, but because they view the task in its massive form. When the mind faces a vague, heavy, and distant goal, it easily falls into a state of paralysis. It's not because you lack the ability, but because the brain doesn't know where to begin. This is why goals that sound right, like finish the report, complete the presentation, or declutter my life, often fail to generate action. They are too broad, too vague, and too heavy. The mind does not respond well to giant commands. It only responds to specific steps. Therefore, the only way forward is not to stare at the entire mountain, but to break it into parts so small that you no longer have an excuse to procrastinate. Instead of writing complete report, write open computer. Create new file. Write 3 bullet points for the introduction. When a task is broken down to the point of clarity and simplicity, the resistance in your head diminishes greatly. This isn't just a productivity hack. It's a shift in how you treat yourself. Procrastinators often fail not because they lack competence, but because they keep forcing themselves to take leaps that are too large. Meanwhile, true progress is usually built from very small movements. Each completed step, no matter how small, sends a clear signal to the mind. This is doable. And the sense of completing each small part lightens the psychological burden, making you less afraid, clearer, and more likely to continue. The Stoic spirit has long been close to this principle. Seneca once reminded us that the problem is not that we have too little time, but that we waste too much of it on unnecessary things. And one of the greatest wastes is sitting around worrying about the entire journey instead of handling the task right at hand. A person with inner strength doesn't live by grand promises to the future. They live by the ability to settle the nearest task with focus and discipline. It is not the mountain peak that builds your character, but the next step. The core lesson here is simple. You don't need to commit to the whole journey. You only need to commit to the smallest step possible right now. Stop asking when you will have enough motivation to finish it all. Ask a much more practical question. What is the smallest thing I can do right this moment? When you answer that and actually get to work, you'll realize a truth that most people learn too late. Motivation doesn't come before action. It appears after you have started. 4. Action precedes motivation. Don't wait for inspiration. There is a widespread illusion that many have believed for too long, that you must feel ready before you can begin, that you need a spark of inspiration, a good enough mood, or a specific surge of energy to appear first before action can take place. But reality is almost the exact opposite. Most of the time, you don't act because you have motivation. You have motivation because you have acted. This is why waiting for inspiration usually only prolongs procrastination. Inspiration is fickle, whereas action is what creates real momentum. When you start doing something, even something very small, the state of your mind begins to shift. The initial sluggishness fades, focus begins to take shape. And when you see a small part of the task completed, the brain realizes that the mission is no longer vague or terrifying. It is this sense of progress that generates the energy to keep going. In other words, action is not the result of motivation. It is often the cause of it. You've likely experienced this many times. Before starting to tidy a corner of your desk, you feel heavy and reluctant. But after just a few minutes of organizing, your mind clears, your working rhythm stabilizes, and continuing becomes much easier than sitting still. It's not because inspiration suddenly fell from the sky. It's simply that your body and mind have been pulled out of stagnation. A small movement has created a new inertia. The Stoic spirit sees this very clearly. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The feeling of resistance at the start isn't always a sign to stop. Often, it is just the natural friction you must pass through before things begin to flow. A person of inner strength doesn't wait until they want to do something to do it. They do what needs to be done, and in that process, strength gradually emerges. So, stop placing your life under the command of fleeting emotions. Don't ask if you have enough vibes today. Ask, What small thing can I do right now, even in an unready state? Do it in boredom. Do it in reluctance. Even do it while your inner self is still resisting. Because once you are in motion, the hardest part is almost always behind you. 5. Visualizing success, a mental exercise to overcome barriers. Once you know how to start and keep moving, the next question is, how do you keep going when real difficulties arise? The answer lies in preparing the mind before the battle begins. Many view visualization exercises as unrealistic dreaming. But if done correctly, this isn't escaping reality. It is a form of preparation for it. When you clearly visualize yourself starting, handling obstacles, and completing a difficult task, the brain becomes accustomed to that scenario. It no longer feels as foreign or as frightening as before. High achievers don't enter a challenge with a passive mind. They have walked through the situation many times in their heads. They don't just visualize the moment of victory, they prepare mentally for the stress, the slowness, the resistance, and the potential mistakes. This is where Stoic practice becomes exceptionally useful. Stoics do not hypnotize themselves with a perfect future. They calmly look ahead at difficulties so that when they arrive, the mind does not panic. They practice premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, not to become more afraid, but to be less surprised. Therefore, correct visualization isn't closing your eyes and dreaming of glory. It is a very practical exercise. Before an important work session, spend a few minutes clearly visualizing yourself sitting down to start, encountering a difficult patch, feeling the urge to quit arise, and then continuing to work piece by piece anyway. Then visualize the moment you finish that task with a lighter, clearer, and steadier mind. When you do this enough, the mind stops exaggerating obstacles and begins to see action as something achievable. You are retraining your brain that this path, while difficult, is not foreign, not vague, and not beyond your capability. 6. The power of now. Why tomorrow is a trap. One of the most comforting lies we tell ourselves is, "I'll do it tomorrow." Just those 4 words are enough to stall countless lives. We push exercise to tomorrow. We delay important emails until tomorrow. We promise ourselves that tomorrow we will be more serious, more alert, and more motivated. But the danger lies here. Tomorrow is usually not a plan. It is a psychological sanctuary. It gives us the feeling that we haven't given up, while in reality we are just continuing to procrastinate. In the mind of a procrastinator, tomorrow always looks more ideal than today. It will be the day we are less tired, less busy, more inspired, and more ready. But life rarely opens up such a perfect moment on its own. And the more you get used to pushing responsibility into the future, the weaker you become in the present. Every time you say, later, you are accidentally teaching your mind a dangerous habit, avoiding difficulty the moment it appears. Stoicism cuts straight through that illusion. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to return to the present, for that is the only place a human truly has the power to act. Epictetus also saw this clearly. Our power does not lie in controlling tomorrow, but in correctly handling the task at hand right now. The past is done. The future has not arrived. Only the present is where your will remains effective. This is why procrastination is so dangerous. It doesn't just take away your time. It erodes your sense of self-mastery. The escape from this trap doesn't lie in thinking bigger, but in shrinking your focus. Don't ask when you'll be ready to do the whole job. Ask, right now, what is the smallest thing I can do? Write one opening line. Send one short email. Open the document and jot down 3 bullet points. A small but real action in the present is always more valuable than 100 beautiful promises pushed to tomorrow. Because you are not defined by what you intend to do, but by what you actually do while this moment is passing. 7. Overcoming the perfectionism trap. Progress over perfection. There is a trap easily mistaken for an admirable quality: perfectionism. Many believe that demanding absolute flawlessness is a sign of high standards and seriousness. But look deeper, and you'll see that in many cases, it isn't strength. It is fear, dressed in a finer name. You don't procrastinate because you don't care. Often you procrastinate precisely because you care too much about how you will be perceived. You fear not being good enough. You fear judgment. You fear that the product you create won't reflect the idealized image you hold of yourself. This is why so many people rewrite a paragraph a dozen times yet never dare to hit send. Prepare for a project so long they never launch it, or wait for the right moment to begin. But the truth is, there is no perfect moment. And the longer you wait for perfection, the longer you remain in a state of stillness. Perfectionism rarely raises quality. It merely delays completion. It makes you prefer doing nothing over doing something that might be just okay. The way out of this trap isn't to lower your standards, but to redefine progress. A task completed, even if raw, is more valuable than a perfect version that exists only in your head. Only through completion do you have something to fix, to learn from, and to improve. While you keep everything in the safe zone of preparation, you aren't actually advancing. You are just procrastinating in a more sophisticated form. Stoic philosophy is crystal clear on this. You cannot control whether the result is perfect, but you can control whether you show up and bring the task to a finish. Epictetus emphasized that our power lies in the actions within our reach, not in forcing reality to fit an absolute standard built by the ego. When you embrace this, you stop obsessing over being perfect from the start and focus on something far more practical. Get it done, then get it better. 8. Building momentum, the loop of progress and motivation. When you accept doing something imperfectly but truly, you don't just overcome fear, you trigger a vital mechanism in the mind, the sense of progress. In psychology, this is a simple yet powerful principle. When the brain recognizes that a task has begun and is moving forward, it tends to reduce resistance and increase the desire to continue. In other words, progress isn't just a result of action, it feeds back into action. This is why small completions are so powerful. When you tidy a corner of your desk, finish a short paragraph, send an email, or complete a tiny portion of work, your mind receives a signal that things are moving. And once there is motion, staying in motion is much easier than starting from zero. What you feel then isn't the romantic inspiration many wait for. It is the momentum effect. You see yourself moving forward, and that creates the energy to take the next step. This is why disciplined people don't bet on erratic bursts of excitement. They build momentum through repeated small completions. The Stoic spirit aligns perfectly here. A Stoic doesn't wait for favorable emotions to act. They choose the right path, do the nearest task, and allow stability to be built from that steady rhythm. You don't always need a grand effort. Often, what matters more is not breaking the chain. Your mission isn't to create a spectacular breakthrough every day. Your mission is to create enough progress so that your mind starts working for you, not against you. A small step completed today is more likely to lead to the next step tomorrow than a grand plan that was never touched. Repeat this long enough, and action stops being a constant internal war. It becomes inertia. 9. The art of self-reward. Discipline is not asceticism. Once you've built momentum and seen the first signs of progress, another danger appears: burnout. Many think that discipline means constant strain, forbidding all joy and turning oneself into a relentless machine. But that is not sustainable discipline. True Stoicism never taught people to live that way. Discipline doesn't mean stripping away joy. It means putting joy in its proper place, so it serves your growth rather than sabotaging it. From the perspective of behavioral psychology, a well-timed reward helps the brain form a positive association with effort. When you finish a difficult task and then allow yourself a few minutes of rest, a cup of coffee, a short walk, or a moment to breathe, you aren't being weak. You are teaching your mind that effort isn't just tied to pressure, it is tied to recognition. When the brain associates action with a positive feeling rather than just exhaustion, maintaining discipline becomes much more natural. But here is the crucial point. The reward must come after the effort, not replace it. If you turn the reward into an escape to procrastinate further, you break the momentum you just built. A short break after completing a task is recovery. An ill-timed indulgence is a relapse. The art of self-reward isn't about how much you give yourself, but about knowing how to reward yourself at the right time, in the right measure, without letting short-term pleasure steal your long-term direction. Truly disciplined people don't treat themselves as an enemy to be punished. They know when to tighten the reins and when to grant themselves a well-earned breath. This balance creates endurance. The ultimate goal isn't to run as fast as possible for a few days, but to build a rhythm steady enough to keep moving forward for a lifetime. Everything we've just explored, from psychology and Stoic philosophy to the inner workings of the brain, will be of no value if it stops at mere understanding. Knowing that you are procrastinating does not automatically set you free from it. Understanding your fear is not the same as overcoming it. Ultimately, every true transformation must pass through a single, simple door: action. The truth is, you don't need an emotional explosion to change your life. You don't need to become a completely different person overnight. What you need is a moment of clarity, clear enough to stop negotiating with hesitation and to begin with one small, real task. The tools are all there. The traps have been named. From this point on, the distance between who you are now and the disciplined version of yourself is no longer a matter of knowledge. It's a matter of whether you are willing to take the step. So, do not let this video end only for everything to return to the way it was. Leave a comment below, stating briefly the single task you will perform in the next 5 minutes. This isn't just a random comment. It is the moment you force yourself to be clear, to commit, and to begin. And if you wish to continue building your inner strength with Stoic Journey, please subscribe, hit like, and share this video as a milestone for the day you stopped procrastinating on your own life. Procrastination does not fear grand plans or big promises. It only truly weakens when you begin to move, no matter how slowly, how clumsily, or how imperfectly. Your task is still waiting there. And after everything we've discussed, all that remains is one blunt question. Will you keep waiting, or will you start? Close this video and take the first step.